Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. On behalf of Foundation NMP, I welcome you all to today's event. This evening marks the continuation of a vision that aims to give back. It is our great honor and privilege to host such an august audience. We are indeed honored with your presence. My name is Vanchika Vashisht and I will be your MC this evening. May I please request you all to switch off your mobile phones or put them on silent mode? Thank you. NMP Design was founded in 1994 by Ms. Nandita and Mr. Minesh Parikh. NMP Design has been able to deliver outstanding built projects in over 25 years of its existence. Ms. Nandita Parikh studied architecture at CEPT University and did her master's in landscape architecture from SPA Delhi. She has been teaching theory of landscape architecture at the landscape department at SPA Delhi since the year 2000. Mr. Minesh Parikh studied architecture at SPA Delhi and did his master's in landscape architecture from the same. He has been teaching design studio at the landscape department at SPA Delhi since the year 2000. Foundation NMP is the philanthropic arm of NMP Design. It aims at curating, researching, training, and channeling the best opportunities for the development of landscape architects. Foundation NMP pledges to act as a catalyst to encourage other philanthropic efforts to support scholarships for students of landscape architecture. NLAS program is an initiative of Foundation NMP. This philanthropic exercise is an effort by Ms. Nandita and Mr. Minesh to support the meritorious students studying landscape architecture across the 3 premier institutes of the country. 2019 is the second year of NLAS program. The NLAS program seeks to promote critical thinking, inspire an interdisciplinary approach, and endorses the application of knowledge. It seeks to empower new generation of landscape architects and designers and make them future ready. The scholarship is a platform that will provide an opportunity for worthy students to succeed in academics and in life. Additionally, it would facilitate the appropriate stimulation to present their work, innovative projects, or ideas with peers amidst distinguished jury from academia and the profession. The program also encourages students to foster a network of future leaders that can inspire new vision and commitment to improving life circumstances. The scholarship is much more than just financial support. The hope is that young people will be motivated to use their education to contribute to the society for the benefit of a much wider community alongside maximizing their own true potential. Today, we celebrate the spirit of giving it back. Let's start with a symbolic gesture, a ceremonial mark of anything auspicious, the lighting of the lamp. With this gesture, we seek the blessings of the Almighty to proceed with the rest of the function. I would like to invite Mr. Vineet Raj Pillai, Ms. Savita Punde, Mr. Samir Mathur, Ms. Jasleen Varaich, and Ms. Priyaleen Singh to inaugurate the award ceremony. So please. Thank you all. This great effort was not possible without the support of several like-minded organizations and individuals. To this effect, we express our gratitude and thanks to the people who have supported the idea of scholarships for students of landscape architecture. The launch of this initiative was supported by a visionary business leader, Mr. Ruben Das, who runs the startup called Kuchi Play Systems. It was due to his support and vision that this idea took off. It was during the jury of the inaugural scholarship in 2018 that Ms. Bela and Mr. Samir Mathur pledged one scholarship. Their practice, Integral Designs, has been involved in a variety of projects ranging from urban parks to sustainable city designs. Their support as a juror and as a sponsor has been invaluable to the idea of these scholarships, and they have continued and renewed their pledge in the current cycle. Mr. Varun Juneja, a diversified professional in architecture, has over 15 years of experience. He is currently serving as the Senior Vice President Design at ATS. He is an alumnus of SPA Delhi. His expertise lies in site planning, development practices in real estate, including project coordination, designing, and project conceptualization. He has pledged one scholarship for 2019 cycle, and with this gesture of giving back to his alma mater, SPA Delhi. Ripples has been in the business of designing and building water features since 1989. From simple aesthetically designed static water features and swimming pools to latest in computer-controlled and musical show fountains with coordinated lighting, the Ripples team is equipped to create awe-inspiring water effects. Ripples has built a reputation for competitive pricing, strict quality control, and on-time delivery. Ripples has pledged one scholarship for the current cycle. KJS Concrete has emerged as manufacturer of pavers, curbstones, and related landscape products of international quality. KJS provides reliable construction, supply solutions for large infrastructure projects. High production capacity and assured quality gives KJS products a distinct advantage. KJS has also pledged one scholarship for the current cycle. We shall now commence with the award distribution ceremony. The NLAS program in its second year, that is 2019, will award 5 scholarships. 2 scholarships are for the students of SPA Delhi, 2 scholarships are for the students of CEPT University, Ahmedabad, 1 scholarship is for students of BNCA, Pune. These scholarships are awarded to the first year student of Masters in Landscape Architecture program enrolled in aforementioned institutes. These students will be paid rupees 50,000 in the first year of study. We were able to appoint a different set of jury panel for each institute, including 1 member from the landscape department of the college and 2 eminent practicing landscape architects. With this, we shall now proceed with the award distribution. First, let us begin with CEPT University, Ahmedabad. The jury for CEPT comprised of Ms. Sujata Kohli, President of Indian Society of Landscape Architects, Ms. Dr. Deepa Maheshwari, Professor, CEPT University, and Ms. Nandita Parikh. I would like to invite on stage Ms. Nandita Parikh, who will read out the jury comments and announce the winner. Can I have a huge round of applause?
Good evening, friends. We really appreciate your presence here today, and your support gives us the strength to carry forward this program for scholarship. However, our effort is unmatched by the spirit of these awardees, who surpassed numerous hardships to achieve the goal of learning. And I think this evening truly belongs to them. So in this jury, we had 4 applications, and between Sujata, myself, and Deepa, there was a consensus to choosing 2 of them. There was Divya Mishra is a continuation, was a scholarship awardee for last year, and for this year, so we had Shanthi, and Rachel, Prem Kumar, and Abinaya. And of these 4, Shanthi and Abinaya were declared joint winners. And believe me, it was really heartening to read about them and hear what they had to say during the interview. And one of them ended up saying that I hope to be part of this program when I'm able to give back. And I think that just struck me in a way, we are doing something very small. It's just, okay, just an initiative. But finally, the struggles that these guys come up with and fight against it or overcome it's really remarkable. So may I request Savita ma'am, could you please come on stage again? Sorry to bother you, but your blessings are much needed. And from the sponsors, Mr. Vineet Rajpillai, please join us. I would request Bharti. She is a graduate from CEPT. She'll be collecting the award on behalf of Divya, who's an awardee for last year's scholarship cycle. Then, Savita, wait. Sorry, you need to be here. Okay, for the second awardee, may I request the sponsor from Mr. Vineet? I think you need to be here. Abinaya, just come on stage, please. Savita. Varun, could you please join us on stage? And I would request Ms. Shanthi, please join us. So this scholarship is, is sponsored by Varun. Thank you, ma'am. Thank you so much.
Thank you all. Let us move on to our next institute, that is BNCA Pune. The jury for BNCA comprised of Ms. Swati Sahasrabudhe, HOD, Department of Landscape Architecture, BNCA, Mr. Vikas Bhosekar, Landscape Architect, Pune, and Mr. Madhup Mazumder, Principal Architect, Design Accord, Delhi. I would like to invite on stage Mr. Madhup Mazumder, who will read out the jury comments and announce the winner.
Good afternoon, friends and dear colleagues. So happy to meet all of you again in the onset of the festive season coming, and we are here today for a great cause. We must once again congratulate NMP Foundation to roll out successfully this second year of the enlarged scholarship, and also further supported by our dear friends Samir, Bela and Varun. This gesture is going to make a lot of difference to the deserving students, and I'm sure once they graduate, they are going to be a gem and they are going to be actually contributing a lot to the industry. I'm humbled and honored to be again part of the jury panel this year for BNCA Pune. The jury team is pretty much the same as before: Vikas Bhosekar, Swati Sahasrabudhe, head of the department. Vikas is a practicing architect, and myself. And we had 4 applications that we received: Akanksha, Monika, Rutuja, and Nishi Chavan. We had a tough time to select, and the award goes to Rutuja Santosh. Please give a big hand. It was very tough to select because we had to go through lots of comparative analysis. At the same time, there were lots of criteria. We shortlisted 2, and we had long drawn debates because I am remotely located in Delhi and they were sitting in Pune. We had a number of con calls and we had a lot of differences and debates, but we really felt good going through the process. But we had to select one, and maybe have Rutuja Santosh come up on the stage, please. One more big round of applause. I would like to invite Jaslin Varich, the presenter for this award, and also the sponsor, Mr. Anil Raina from Ripples, to come up and kindly hand over the scholarship. Thank you. Before we move on to the scholarship distribution for the other institute, let us enjoy a narrative and take a break. Narrative shared by Mrs. Nandita Parikh. She's going to take us through the paradise gardens of Kashmir and Spain. Please welcome Nandita Parikh.
All right, so I'm back on stage, but to make this event more engaging, we have put together a small presentation. Vina and I will be sharing our experiences of our travels to Uzbekistan, Kashmir, and Spain. And while reviewing the pictures together, we realized that historical landscapes of these places represent the central idea of paradise. Initially, the purpose and function of these built environments was to create an oasis of comfort and beauty in harsh climates. Now, it may end up sounding like a lecture, but I would like to start by talking about the idea of paradise. Now, the word paradise originates from an Iranian word that Greeks later modified into paradisios or paradisos, which meant enclosed garden. Now, it couldn't be more appropriate or ironic that a garden was seen to manifest heaven on earth rather than a building. So before the buildings were really built, it was the controlled landscape which was considered a paradise. And this image of a painting from an Egyptian tomb depicts a wall garden with the house set amidst nature's bounty, recreation of an idyllic place protected from the vagaries of hostile surroundings. Later on, this concept was refined and formalized further in Islamic culture as a paradise garden or a charbagh, seen here even in a Persian carpet, where the 4 rivers of water flowed in a garden with lush planting, an apt representation of paradise on earth. As seen in this diagram from a book called Sense of Unity by Ardalan and Bakhtiar, recapitulation of paradise in a built environment is seen in these two generic forms, a bagh or a garden and a hayat or a courtyard. Essentially two basic ways of relating the built to the unbuilt or the open space. Bagh has an outward flow of space from a building set within an enclosed space, and hayat is a contained space within the building with an inward flow of space, usually centered on a pool of water. These forms are simple in individual expression, but their combinations and arrangements result in vibrant and interesting places at all scales and geographical and cultural contexts. Now, Spain is one part of Europe which has seen a lot of confluences of cultures. And this Islam spread here, it came through the northern part of Africa, crossed over the Strait of Gibraltar and occupied Spain. And it has seen now this, I'll be talking about three examples. One is Alhambra in Granada, Alcazar in Sevilla, and Paseo de Naranjos in Cordoba. Prior to Islam, this region was under Roman rule, who built peristyle gardens within townhouses and country estates with enclosed gardens. So in fact, in most of the Spanish towns, Roman aqueducts, Moorish and Islamic palaces and mosques, and Christian churches exist next to each other, sometimes within the same building. So you have a mosque, which was a mosque and then became a cathedral, and life goes on. So to begin with, Alhambra was one place we visited, and this was an interesting experience because I've been reading and teaching about it, but to really go through that place. So essentially, it's a citadel spread over about 35 odd acres, and there is, this part is called Hanera Life, which is a summer residence. It's on a height, and this is the main citadel. This was the military area or the compound like that, and this was the main palace. And in today's time, this is the point that one enters this place. So in terms of built complex, it's like a mosaic of open and built. You have very judicious use of water in just enough and no more. And it's a combination of vistas, controlled vistas, and gardens all put together as a complex. Now, we visit all these sites, historical sites, and we always wonder, what is the best way to make them sort of tourist friendly. And this structure at the entrance of Alhambra is a contemporary structure, but its architecture is so understated and unobtrusive that it's almost like a precursor to what lies ahead. And even the interesting signage, which is very informative, it's not simply go there or come here, but it talks about the craft and the meaning of details there. All these places, what Arabs actually brought to Spain was the system of irrigation, and that was crucial to all these settlements to really exist. So it was not very clear because you can't perceive this in a one day's time, but you could see hidden channels, aqueducts, channels along the walkway, even along the stairway, which rotated water all through this. The river lies at the bottom, and this entire thing was spread by, is irrigated by stream water. This is a very typical way how each space was approached. So there's a frame, and there is a long vista, and then you have a linear water body which sort of guides your eye and controls the space. First, I'll show you general life, or Hanera life as it is called. Now, Islam generally works with cross-axis, and this was predominantly a singular thing. So later when I read about it, this small thing was actually a mosque facing the Kaaba. So you have really a garden, but garden which is defined by or edged by retaining wall, There is a corridor here which overlooks the countryside, and there's a small mihrab which was actually the mosque. So it's like this garden is not an afterthought, but it's like a living space, a room by itself. And it's preceded by this small courtyard, which was fairly intimate in space, in scale, and you had a small trough of water or an urn. Now, another thing that was interesting is that many of these patterns were inspired by lotus. Now, lotus as a plant doesn't grow there. So it was something that Arab and Persians carried from their travels, and it became a pattern or a motif to be repeated. This is basically the patio of canal, or just a long channel of water, but what makes it vibrant is all the planting, which is left as natural as possible. Now, the last picture was something you often see it in books, but what really added to the experience of the place was this colonnade here, from where you actually have a look to outside. So it's not a contained space. It might be a courtyard, but it's not contained. It has linkages to the sky, to outside. You even get a glimpse of a hidden garden as you come out. These are other parts. Now, this form of arch was often repeated in the entire complex, whether it was in architecture or as a frame in landscape. This was seen even in hedges, cypress hedges, which is almost architectural in their expression. Then this is the main palace of Alhambra, where this red line is your one route of movement. So you might have axial sort of architectonics to it, but the movement system is something which follows a very different logic altogether. And that really added an element of surprise to the way you perceive space. So this is the court of Myrtle, which is again a very stark landscape statement. The beauty came from the building. Architecture is almost like very stark and precise. It's not flamboyant. And what adds to this whole ambience is the reflection that is seen in water. Also, the water actually comes inside the buildings in these troughs and fountains. This is something you also see in Red Fort and Red Fort at Lahore and Delhi and Agra, where the edge between in and out is blurred, not just by visual thing, but even physically by the flow of water. And the architecture was almost tracery-like. It was flamboyant, it was very intricate. This entire work was done in plaster. So it's not stone, it's plaster work. There is mosaic tiles. And this is a three-dimensional thing. It's almost like salicite kind of three-dimensional forms that were created in plaster. And though it is monochrome, but the way the light is reflected, it's something which makes it very alive and very unique in itself. There's also extensive work with wood which was seen in the ceilings. Then the masterpiece, or what Alhambra is really famous for, the coat of lions. Now again, lion is something you find in Africa and India, and not really Spain. So the imagery is something that Arabs carried through, and it was recreated there. Now this is the place, this is the first glimpse, and finally it's a very enclosed space, but it's made light by the architectural statement. And landscape, I've seen some pictures of it where all these were flower beds much lower than the walkway. And I think it's the ease of tourist numbers that they have paved it all and made it into this white marble. But it was actually a garden which was full of planting. But this architecture was really, really a marvel to look at, to just see how intricately these things were worked. Again, the water came inside, and there was a link between in and out. This is a small detail. Now, we landscape architects, wherever we go, we keep looking at details, but this was an edge stone with planting. So it's something, it leaves you some gap for expansion, and there is an edge, solid edge, and then the planting is there. Now, another thing is that in the plan you see that all spaces are contained or enclosed, but there will be one glimpse of the space next or ahead. So either with a framed, mostly with windows, and you feel that there is something else which needs to be seen or it gets connected. So this is a courtyard of Lindarja, which seen from above and seen at ground level gives you a different layer of understanding or expression. This is another courtyard, which is courtyard of a grated window. So it's basically to be viewed from top. This was almost like a zanana looking onto a public space. And at this point, you get a gallery from which you get the views from across the valley. So though it seems like an enclosed space, this actually has a link to a larger landscape. This was just some other, now this complex, it thrived for almost 400 years, and it has overlays of different buildings of different period which are part of the same complex. But what was amazing and interesting is that they revived the planting in a way that it looks like the planting was also there. It is not, suddenly they didn't make lawns everywhere and put topiaries which are not part of the same vocabulary. So it was very nicely restored. This became a World Heritage Site in 1984, and they have maintained this status since then. This is one of the later parts of this complex, which is the Palace of Patal. Here, this particular piece, now the star is something which was overlooking for the overlook towards the valley, but this, though the way water is used is very similar to the other courtyard, but it's more open, so it doesn't get the same ambience or the look. And then further on, you start seeing a link with the kind of Italian gardens that you see in Europe. So it's probably something which happened in the later part of this place's history. These were just details which I thought, again, how tourists or facilities for tourists is managed so nicely that they don't look obtrusive or painted pink, white, black, or it just goes with the entire scheme of things the way history intended it to be. Now, this one picture tells you why this site was chosen. It's a site which is on a hillock or a plateau, and it overlooks a larger site. Again, the idea of framed views was very important at all places. Now, Alcazar is actually a name of a palace. Any palace is called Alcazar. So you'll find Alcazar in Turkey, in Sevilla, in Cordoba. So it's a generic name, but this particular one, this is where Game of Thrones was shot. So there were huge crowds going around, and I was wondering, okay, really, this is so much more than just Game of Thrones. I mean, it's been around for past 500 years, and it's gained notoriety just because of the recent history or recent TV series. But this is a complex which sees a lot of layering of history. So this is a wall which is probably from the Roman times, and then Islamic, and then later Christian architecture is seen here. So a simple courtyard, but it essentially has a lot of history which sort of sits cheek by jowl, and it makes sense and has a coherence there. This is one pretty much restored courtyard which is called Patio de Donales, and here we see what the Mughal gardens or Paradise Gardens really wanted planting to have. These are recessed planting beds. So the planting is it's sited in a way that you walk just at the flower bed kind of carpet impact, and it also protects the planting. These are some images of the buildings which are very, very ornate, and they again show a layer of time which, so it was not built at one time, but again a lot of ornamentation and play of light. Now, the building was concentrated here, and there was a large open piece of land which was structured as gardens, and at one edge you see that there is a more intricate landscape detail, and finally it becomes more park-like, but even then there were these walls which contained different areas. So these are some of the details. Now, if you can look past Minesh, this was a very nice detail of steps and a seat which was combined together, and its ornamentation still looks very, very vibrant and you know, alive and colorful. So this was their baths, which every Islamic palace complex has the hammams, which are very much part of their lifestyle. And this is all sunlight, which is filtered, and it keeps the water fresh, and it still looks amazing even today. Last example of Spain. Now, we always think of garden as something which is a pleasure garden. This is actually a mosque, and the mosque has this space called Sehen, which was traditionally an area which was an open space around the mosque, and this is detailed, or this is planted with orange trees. So on a grid which follow the grid of the columns, and it's like a space by itself. So the garden is not something where you just, it's not a pleasure garden, it's a garden with veneration. So there are ablution tanks, and the interesting part was the irrigation channels. So the ablution water was circulated in a way that it irrigated all the orange trees. These are the images of interiors. Now, these are the columns, the original columns of the mosque, and in between they have inserted the cathedral. So the base is Islamic, and the roof on top is more recent addition. Now, lastly, what Kashmir we all know, and it's just an idea that the same concept, how it worked in Spain and how it works in Kashmir, is the same theme of an idea of paradise garden, but different cultures. So in Moorish landscapes, we see influence of Italian gardens, and in Kashmir, I believe there'll be influence of Persian and Indian cultures and how it sits together. So how do you make a paradise garden in a region which is called a paradise? Kashmir is considered paradise on earth. So what is the garden aspect which is played upon? And the first thing that struck was the play of water, which meant that all these gardens relate to the lake. Probably there was a natural spring which was tapped, worked around in the garden, and it goes and meets the lake. It is something which is true of Shalimar Bagh, Naseem Bagh. Nishad Bagh has a very clear link with the lake, and even Chashme Shahi. So something which was there in nature, and then it was sort of articulated and designed further. So Shalimar Bagh, today of course it's surrounded by what it is, but maybe at one time it was all nature, and there was a spring which flows through, and it goes through a canal and meets the Dal Lake. But essentially it was a royal garden, or you can even call it a royal palace in landscape, because the structure was very formal. The entire garden was designed, or it was detailed around this central water channel. Diwan-e-Aam is the public area, which is essentially a building across the channel. This is the view across. But what really looked very interesting was Diwan-e-Khas. Now, Diwan-e-Khas sits in a charbagh by itself, but it's not a building. To think that it is just a platform in water. So what was celebrated was the location in the garden, and not really the flamboyance or the elaborateness of a building. So there was no building. Probably they pitched tents here and the emperor sat here, but it was its location in the garden which made it what it was. Further on, the other square is part of the Zanana garden. So there were these guard houses in a way, which went on, but the movement in this garden is along the water channel, so everything is almost very, very linear and very controlled, very formal in its expression and statement. And the Zanana garden has a black pavilion, which was seen like it's actually part of you can call it a palace, the way it is set. It's along a long axis. And the view from inside is that, okay, you are in paradise, but there is a controlled paradise around you, which has fountains, and it has a lot of greenery, and it also has a backdrop of the hills, so the mountains, really. So again, framing of views, something we saw in Alhambra also. So that. And finally, this is a delight of any landscape architect. The fact that the water feature could be so robust, so lively. The sound there was amazing, and to imagine what Shahid Saab used to talk about chini khanas and how they really articulate the wall and play up. So it was really a magical thing to see in its glory. The next example was Nishad Bagh. Now Nishad Bagh is much bigger. If Shalimar Bagh is around 20-25 acres, this is more than 35 acres. So it's much larger, much closer to the lake. And if you can see here, this small thing is actually a small arch in the Dal Lake, where when you stand here, you can see through it, and there is a small, some sort of waterway which seems to connect to this particular garden. This is all lake, but when you see it in Google Earth, you realize that there is an imaginary line which sort of gives a certain sense of direction and linkage to the surrounding thing. From here, that is a small structure in the lake, which is something like this. Probably through this, the shikara used to come and people used to come to this particular garden. Now, this garden was not really a royal garden, so here the scale is more, it's large, but it's not as formal. This has about 12 terraces, which are based on the zodiac signs. But here the link to the surrounding nature is much, much larger. So it's almost like a public garden where the channel is there, but since the scale is so large, you will realize that you don't actually walk next to water, you walk away from the water. So here the perception of a much larger space is more apparent than what was seen in Shalimar Bagh. So they all are char bags, but there is this subtle variations in design intent which makes one garden different from the other. So again, the way water is played upon, the way terraces are done, there are even terraces which are with earth slopes, so it's not always hard retaining walls, but even gentle slopes are worked out. And again, our delight of chadar and a fountain which still works after maybe 400 years, the nozzle still works. So that was a pleasure to see. My last example, Jami Masjid. Again, masjid doesn't seem like a pleasure garden, but you can see that there was a char bagh inside the masjid. It's enclosed on all four sides. You enter from here, and the main mihrab is on this side. So it's somehow, the scale is in a way that it gives a sense of containment, yet there's an awareness of what is around. And there's a very simple but grand architectural statement here, and also it's linked to water and what gets reflected as a sky in it. Thank you.
Thank you so much, ma'am. The presentation was very informative. Now, I would like to invite Ms. Vina Verghese on stage. Ms. Vina Verghese Biswas is a landscape architect based in New Delhi. She is a graduate from IIT Kharagpur with a master's degree in landscape architecture from SPA Delhi. She is a co-founder of VSPB Associates and has designed several architectural, urban design and landscape projects. She is also presently the visiting faculty in the Department of Landscape Architecture at SPA Delhi. Please, ma'am.
Hi, everyone. I'm happy to be part of this. I'll walk you through the heritage sites and public spaces of Samarkand, Bukhara, and Tashkent, places that we visited on a family holiday in June this year. As our trip unveiled, Uzbekistan is home to some of the Muslim world's best architectural marvels, featuring grand, ornate portals, stunning blue domes, and immaculate patterns in shimmering blue tiles. A quick look at the geographical context just to get the overall perspective. If you're intrigued by the ancient Silk Road, you'll find three of the route's most important cities in Uzbekistan. They lie kind of midway on the old Silk Route from China to the Mediterranean. In its history, it's been ruled by Persians, Greeks, Turks, Mongols, Russians. A lot of commonality there with the history of our subcontinent. Alexander passed through in the 4th century BC. In the 14th century, Mongol Turkic ruler Ahmet Timur established his capital in Samarkand. One second. Yeah, this is an interesting map of Samarkand showing the area of the World Heritage Property and the buffer zone. We covered most of the area marked, the central area marked as 2. Samarkand was one of the oldest inhabited cities of the world and was added to the UNESCO World Heritage List in 2001. That's the Ahmet Timur Mausoleum. Built in the 15th century, it is the model for later built tombs, including the Humayun's tomb in Delhi, the Taj Mahal in Agra, mostly built by Timur's descendants, the ruling Mughal dynasty. The Google map shows the monument at the end of the street that actually connects a statue of Timur at the other end. Marked in red are the entrance court and the large internal courtyard of the mausoleum. I actually couldn't find any documentation on this, so no drawings, and I had to rely on the Google Maps. That's a view of the internal court. Nice patterns on the floor and walls in stone and mosaic tiles. The interior is beautifully gilded in gold. This has been heavily restored over the years. That's Ahmet Timur's statue on a large traffic island. That's also a large public space. He continues to be a celebrated national hero. This is Registan, meaning the sandy place, was one of the oldest public squares in Samarkand. An aerial view there shows the large central court marked in red and the green spaces around it, sitting within a fairly dense city fabric. This square, measuring roughly 110 meters into 60 meters, was once the main city square full of markets and lined with caravanserais. It was a gathering place for royal announcements, celebrations, public executions too. 3 madrasas or Islamic schools surround the Registan Square. It's part of the legacy of Ahmet Timur. One of the structures even bears the inscription, "If you want to know about us, examine our buildings." The influence of this grand square stretches far across to the world cities, from Isfahan in Iran to Agra, even to Russia's St. Petersburg. Registan still is the center of the city's social life. That's a nice shopping street that connects 2 heritage monuments, visible in the plan too. So we are now going from Registan to Bibi Khanym Mosque. This mosque was built in the 15th century using the amount of loot Timur earned during his Indian invasion. It has a marble Quran visible in the picture on the left. The monument now stands as a grandiose ruin, mostly in an unrestored state. Interior views of another structure of the same complex. That's also a craftsman at work there in an internal bazaar. This is Shahi Zinda, also called the Tomb of the Kings. Shahi Zinda is a necropolis in the northeastern part of Samarkand. It's a stunning street of mausoleums belonging to Timur's family. The street is marked in yellow in the Google image. That's a view of the internal street. It's a whole complex of mausoleums. This has some of the richest tile work in the Muslim era, very intricate patterns and in so massive a scale. We traveled to Samarkand by the bullet train. It has an impressive modern railway station built mainly in concrete and stone, erected using local materials and local craftsmen. The color palette is quite in sync with the city's heritage structures. Coming to Bukhara, a UNESCO map of the World Heritage Site, that's what you see there. Bukhara has been a cultural, commercial and economic center of the Great Silk Road for many centuries. This shows a 200-hectare heritage site with its buffer zone. Bukhara is now over 2,500 years old. Chashma Ayub, that's one of the monuments there, the heritage structures. Legend states that the prophet Ayub visited this place and brought forth a spring of water by the blow of his staff on the ground. The well still exists and its water is said to be exceptionally pure. The current edifice was constructed during the reign of Timur and features a conical dome that is otherwise uncommon in the region. It sits at one end of a large paved court that was perhaps a public space. Close to it is a large water tank, ruins of an old fort wall visible in the background. The Ark of Bukhara. This is a massive fortress that was initially built and occupied around the 5th century AD. In addition to being a military structure, the Ark was essentially a town that was inhabited by the various royal courts that held sway over the region. It was used as a fortress until it fell to Russia in 1920. So the interiors are kind of being reconstructed because it was bombed at one point of time. Currently it houses museums covering its history. The Bolo House Mosque, this lies on the opposite side of the citadel of Ark, served as a Friday mosque. You can see a large ablution tank in the front area. Most of the mosques in the region have large water structures that were used before the rituals. Beautiful structural details there in wood. Now that's a whole complex of heritage monuments. The minaret is the most famed part of the ensemble and dominates over the historical center of the city. There's a Kalyan minaret and the Kalan Mosque. That's a view of the mosque from the other structure. We had a very unexpected encounter with the Delhi Doordarshan crew over here. They were making a documentary on the city. They were in fact happy to see us, 3 architects from Delhi, even recorded a short interview of our travel experience. The minaret is a circular brick tower, narrowing upwards all of 45 meters high. There's a brick spiral staircase that twists up inside the tower. So these are incredible, works in brick, all of brick. That's a courtyard of the Khanym Mosque with the gallery surrounding it. The Charminar. Notice that each of the 4 towers has a different decorational motif. They say that the elements reflect the 4 religions known to the Central Asians. One can find motifs reminiscent of a cross, a Buddhist praying wheel, in addition to the Zoroastrian and Islamic motifs. The Toki Sarafun Bazaar, that's a whole shopping street that connects several heritage structures, many of them under adaptive reuse. You can see the street in the map. That's a very vibrant shopping street. It has several cafes too, apart from the craft centers. This is Labi Halls. The ensemble is the name of the area surrounding one of the few remaining halls in the city. Several such ponds existed prior to the Soviet rule. They acted as the city's principal sources of water, but were also known for spreading diseases, so they were mostly filled up in the 1920s and 30s by the Soviets. The Labi House survived owing to its role as the centerpiece of an architectural ensemble that dates back to the 16th and 17th centuries. Interestingly, the heritage structures, though protected by UNESCO, is very much a part of the city and its social life. It's also remarkable how the newer structures constructed with architectural controls and guidelines fit into the overall scheme. The picture on the top left is a new structure, but it's got all the elements of the other old buildings. Coming to Tashkent, the capital city. Tashkent's Broadway Street lies right at the heart of the city. It connects 2 most important squares of the capital, the Amir Timur Square and the Independence Square. So you can see the map, the streets marked in yellow. On the right side is the Timur Square area, landscaped area, and on the left is the Independence Square. The Broadway Street is perhaps the busiest place in the city, with a lot of street shows. A lot of people here, locals as well as tourists, also explained by the location. The Amir Timur Square is a nice large public space that connects to the Broadway Street. So when we were there in the evening, it was full of people and all kinds of people just walking, sitting around. The Independence Square is the central square of Tashkent, where most city parades, public ceremonies are held. It's the largest square in terms of both its majesty and scale, built during the Soviet times. It was renamed after the country's independence in 1992. Tashkent is a much greener landscape as compared to Samarkand and Bukhara, which are mostly paved courts. This is the Martyrs Memorial Complex, which honors those who suffered under Soviet colonial rule. It's a nice large landscaped area on the banks of a canal. What you see in the map there, that's a 23-kilometer long irrigation canal, Angkor, that runs along the entire central part of the Tashkent city. And the large green space there is the memorial area. There's a museum located in the complex. It houses exhibits on the recent history of the territory. the TV Taj visible in the background. It's a beautiful structure with intricate work in both wood and mosaics. The Monument of Courage. This was built in memory of the victims of a terrible earthquake that shook the city and left several thousand families homeless. It was the strongest earthquake the city had in the history of the city. This memorial is built on a nice large public square and is reminiscent of the trail of destruction that it caused by its design. This is the Lal Bahadur Shastri Memorial. The adjoining street is named after him. As we know, he had died under mysterious circumstances in Tashkent. Lastly, we come to the Hazrat Imam Mosque. That's one of the main attractions of Tashkent, located in the old town. The structure is of the 16th century and consists of a mosque building and 250 meters high minarets. What you see in the map there, the entrance court is the smaller, the smaller square that's marked there, and a large paved internal court is marked in behind it. Entrance area of the mosque has splendid work in wood. It also houses the oldest Quran in the world. That's a large paved internal court. The minarets loom high above the city skyline. That's mosaic patterns from the different monuments we visited. Now, the art of the mosaics has passed down the generations, and it's actually a great place for ceramic souvenirs. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. The presentation was very enlightening. Lastly, we move forward with the award ceremony for SPA Delhi. The jury for SPA Delhi comprised of Mr. Samir Mathur, member DUAC, Ms. Savita Punde, founder Design Cell, ex-president ISOLA, and Dr. Aarti Grover, assistant professor, landscape department, SPA Delhi. I would like to invite on stage Dr. Aarti Grover, who will read out the jury comments and announce the winner.
Hello everyone, good evening. So it's really nice to be again here this year and see some of my students. I don't know, there is a fest going on in the college and some of them have not come, but I was expecting more of you here. But anyway, hello to all. And we were a part of the jury in SPA Delhi. And the jury panel composed of Mr. Samir Mathur, Ms. Savita Punde, and myself. So, it's very humbling to be a part of this because every one of us sometimes in life have thought about doing such an initiative, but I really congratulate Mr. Minesh Parikh and Ms. Nandita on actually carrying it forward, making it wide, involving so many people, making it really happen, and that's where, the real happiness comes from. So, one feels really humbled to be a part of it in some way. And so last year we had given the awards in Delhi to Ms. Jesna and Ms. Akshaya. This time we are repeating their awards. I will request the first set of people to come on the stage. The presenter, Mr. Sachin Jain. The sponsor, Ms. Bela Mathur. And the awardee, Miss Chesna. Please come on. Congratulations. Congratulations. Congratulations, Jasna, and thank you, Mr. Jain and Ms. Mathur. Now I'll request the second set of people to come onto the stage. Ms. Sujata Hingorani, the presenter. Is Sujata here? No? Yeah. A round of applause for Ms. Sujata. Please come on in. Mr. Minesh Parikh, our sponsor for this award. And the winner of this award is Ms. Akshaya. Last year also she had come and joined us here, but this time she's not well, so Jasna would be taking on her place. Congratulations to Akshaya. Thank you, Mr. Parikh and Ms. Ingorani. Yeah. So now very happily I'm moving down to the next set of awards, which is the fresh people receiving the award for the first time with big broad smiles on their faces I can see from here. Okay, let me just call upon the presenter for this set, which is Mr. Amit Babbar. The sponsor, Ms. Ratna Mathur. And the awardee, the winner, Miss Arshi Lodha. Come on, Arshi. Congratulations. A big round of applause. Congratulations, Arshi. Thank you, Ms. Mathur. Thank you, Mr. Amit Babbar. Moving on to the last award of this category, I'll invite the presenter, Ms. Dr. Priyoleen Singh, with a nice smile on the face, ma'am. And the sponsor, Ms. Nandita Parikh. And the awardee, Mr. Shashank Bhatt. I think we can have a better applause for him here. Congratulations, Shashank. Thank you so much, Ms. Parikh and Mr. So with this, we'll end this session of these awards. And I'll leave the stage by saying thank you for involving all of us into this. And you're doing a really nice, a very noble job. Congratulations to you.
Thank you, ma'am. Now, I would like to invite Mr. Minesh Parikh on the stage. Sir, please.
Hello. Well, I don't have much to say. This initiative was begun. I was requested to curate the scholarship program by Mr. Robin Das of Kochi, and coincidentally, him and me both had gone through a life experience which made us do it with a lot of passion. But after the inaugural first year, Robin backed out. He said, "It's not helping me in my business." And I was heartbroken, and I was about to almost end it. And at that time, lot of support came from Samir and Varun here, and they said we'll not let it stop or end. And due to the inspiration and encouragement of these two dear friends, I was able to curate it again this year, and then of course Ripples and KJS stepped in. So from my heart, I would just like to say that first of all, the blessings of all the seniors who are present are very important to carry this through. And then the support of all those who encouraged in that hour when it was about to be abandoned or left is what mattered today to everybody who is in this room. And then I would like to thank Nandita and Veena both for making this evening very interesting, which would otherwise just have been a prize-giving ceremony. And I would like to thank all the sponsors, KJS, Ripples, Samir, Bela, and Varun, to support it, and all the student community who came, participated in large numbers. And lastly, the three institutes, SPA, CEPT, and BNCA, and their department heads, Aarti, Dr. Deepa, and Swati. So it was the toil of all these people who made it possible, and I will request a continuation of your support in all aspects wherever you have supported it, and your continued blessings also. And if that happens, we will be able to do something for the students in the coming years too. Thank you all. Let's have a break for high tea.